So Ruby has a built-in function called open to open a file. This function returns a handle, a file object for reading or modifying the file, right? So we can use different modes while opening files. We can open the file for reading. If no mode is specified, this is the one that's used by default. Open the file for writing. Creates a new file if it does not exist or truncates the existing file. Open the file for exclusive creation. This operation fails if the file already exists. Open the file for appending. It doesn't truncate the file, and it creates a new file if it doesn't exist. Open in text mode. This is also a default usage. Open in binary mode. And open the file for updating. So let's see how this works in a few examples. So let's open up a file in write and updating mode. So File, New, test.txt, W+, and it returns a file handler. So let's assign it to a variable f. So there is no test.txt, so it's going to be created. Now, we can also use an absolute file directory. So we can use the puts and write methods to write strings into a file. F puts, first line, F write, second line, F write, third line. And now we should close the file handler using the close method. Closing a file will free up the resources that were tied to the file. Save it and run the script. And the file is created. So let's open it. And as you can see, the first line has a new line character. The other lines do not, because the puts method adds a new line character at the end of the line. So we can use a block with the open method. File, open, test.txt, R for read mode, do file as a block variable, puts file read. So save it and run, and it shows all the content of a file, because the read method gets the entire file content, right? Okay. So this usage is an elegant way of doing your file operations. Ruby can take care of closing up the file. So yeah, let's open the file. File mode is reading. And we can use the read method to read the file. The read method also takes size as a parameter. The file cursor position changes after the read statement. And if no size is specified, it reads in the rest until the end of the file. So further reading returns an empty string. So if we want to bring the file cursor to the initial position, we can use the rewind method. We can use the read line method to read it line by line, and it reads it until the new line, including the new line character. Each red line statement returns a line, and further reading returns an empty string. So let's run it, and it shows the first line again. We can use the each method on the file handler to read it line by line. F, each, a block, do, line, as block variable, puts, line. And run it, and it shows each line. We can use an absolute path as our method to get the absolute path of a file. File, absolute path, test.txt, and then print it, run it, and it shows the absolute path. So if we have an absolute path of a file and want just the file name, we can use the base name method, base name with absolute path, run it, and it shows the file name. Now, let's say if we don't want an extension, we can specify the extension as a second parameter for the base name method. Run it, and it shows a file name without the extension. We can use some file utility methods according to whatever we need. We can check the existence of a file with the exists method, puts, file, : exist, test.txt, run it, and it shows true. So we can check a given file name if it's a real file or not with using the file method. Run it, it shows true. We can also check if a given file name is a directory by using the directory method. Run it, and it shows false. We can rename files using the rename method, file, rename, test.txt, foo.txt, run it, and checking the Project Explorer, and sure enough, it is renamed. So we can also delete files using the delete method. File, delete, foo.txt, run, and checking the Project Explorer, sure enough, it's deleted.